Welcome everyone to History Gone Wilder, part of Half History Will Travel. I'm your host, the Wilder historian, Dr. Lucas Wilder, and last time I talked about the tension present in the Army of the Tennessee when John A. Logan was removed as temporary commander and moved back to Corps Command, and Oliver Otis Howard was raised to the command of the Army of the Tennessee. In this episode, the Battle of Ezra Church begins as that army moves to the western side of Atlanta, and John Bell Hood attempts to stop them from getting to the Macon and Western Railroad. If you like what I do, please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already, join the Patreon page, or purchase something from a Teespring store or Etsy shop. Every little bit helps. Thank you. William T. Sherman ordered Oliver Otis Howard, the new commander of the Army of the Tennessee, to move that army behind the Army of the Cumberland and slide down the western side of Atlanta with the aim of cutting the Macon and Western Railroad, one of the last avenues of supplies going into the Confederate-held city. One of the main objective points was the Lick Skillet Road. Not too far from that road was Ezra Church, which became a focal point for the Federal Army. John Bell Hood, the commander of the Army of Tennessee, wanted to block the Federal advance to Lick Skillet Road, and devised a plan where Stephen D. Lee's corps would block Howard's troops from coming south on July 28th. Then, the next day, Alexander P. Stewart's corps would march behind Lee and get on the flank of the Federal Army and drive it eastward. The Army of the Tennessee got to Ezra Church and Lick Skillet Road first, with members of the 17th Corps and parts of the 15th Corps beginning to dig in as best they could. Many took the pews out of the church to create breastworks. Many of Logan's 15th Corps didn't have much with which to construct protection and were forced to guard their position with little defense against enemy bullets. Hood delayed the movement of Lee's troops until 10:30 a.m. on the 28th. When Lee got to the big bend in the Lick Skillet Road, he formed up his 1st Division, that under John C. Brown, with 3 brigades in front and 1 in reserve. Lee was supposed to have another division to launch the attack with, but Lee wouldn't wait for it to arrive on the field, believing that he needed to attack sooner rather than later. Lee's troops stepped off on their attack at about 11:45 a.m. The engagement between Brown's division and Logan's corps was the second time that these two units had faced off against one another in just 6 days. Brown's men broke Logan's line in the Battle of Atlanta and held the entrenchments for about an hour before Logan rallied his troops to send the rebels back to Atlanta's defenses. In that battle, the Confederates weren't able to use or carry away artillery pieces captured on the field, so in this attack, Confederate artillerymen were scattered throughout the brigades in the event that they captured Federal guns. Unfortunately for them, the terrain and heavy trees prevented artillery from being useful, and most of the pieces were taken away from the Union line. An Alabamian recalled that the brigade charged in gallant style, driving the enemy from their skirmish line and from another and stronger position protected by rails and earthworks. A Hoosier in the 12th Indiana wrote that the enemy surged like a vast wave upon our lines, yelling like demons and firing as they came. The Confederates closed in on the enemy, and a deadly firefight developed with both sides taking heavy casualties. John Coltart, the man who commanded a brigade in Brown's division in the Battle of Atlanta just a few days before, was put back down to the regimental command in that same brigade in favor of George D. Johnston. Johnston had won accolades for his bravery during the Atlanta campaign and was now made a brigadier general with command over Coltart's former brigade. Soon into the fight, Johnston was hit in the leg. Johnston attempted to use the reins of his horse to hold the broken bones in place to ease the pain while riding, but the pain became too severe and he turned command over to Coltart. Coltart was wounded earlier in the fight but attempted to lead the brigade through it. The pain from his wound would force him from the field, and he handed command to the next available officer, a lieutenant colonel named Harry T. Toolman. When Toolman took over, he called off the attack and pulled back. The brigade that Toolman now commanded was known as Dee's Brigade, after Zachariah Dees, who was technically its commander, but Dees had been on sick leave since May. At least one member of the Army of Tennessee derisively called that brigade General Dee's racehorses, because they seemed to always leave the fight. On Toolman's left was the brigade of Jacob Sharp, full of Mississippians. A soldier from Illinois who saw that brigade's approach described the scene. The two charging lines came steadily on, at first without firing, the sergeants behind with fixed bayonets keeping every man up to his work. Exposed to our fire at long range, scores were dropping under the cool aim of marksmen who had not lost the skill acquired by their practice at Vicksburg. but the gaps were quickly closed, and the rapid step quickened. Alone and on foot, an almost exultant expression lighting up his dark face, General Logan passed along behind the line with words of cheer on his lips. "Hold them! Steady, boys! We've got them now!" Yet that desperate wave, though gradually growing thin and weak, is getting too near. It is scarce 80 yards from the regiments on our right. Encouraged by the general's presence, these regiments increased the rapidity of their fire. The Mississippians made much better headway against the Federal line than their comrades to their right. That section of the Union line possessed little cover to protect them from the rebel bullets, with one Federal officer commenting that most of his men were wounded from the knee and up, demonstrating the lack of protection afforded to his men. The Union soldiers not only had to contend with rebel bullets, but the intense Georgia heat, which soared past 90 degrees. One Federal soldier remembered the day being very hot, maneuvering through thick underwood, over fences and rocks was anything but light duty, and many of the men were obliged to fall out. The Mississippi regiments on the left flank of Sharp's line threw back the Federals in their front, made up of the 6th Missouri and the 83rd Indiana. Both regiments ran to the rear, and the 41st and 9th Mississippi gained the Federal position, at least for the moment. Logan was behind the lines and realized his flank was now broke. He quickly rallied his 2 regiments and others in the area and attacked the Mississippians, hoping to stem the tide of the Confederate attack that broke his right flank and to hold it until more reinforcements could come on the scene. The Mississippians withdrew after their initial success. One Union soldier remembered, "The suspense is almost beyond endurance, for we expect a break on our right." Penn fails a description here of those awful moments as they pass. To our right, at the angle of the 55th and 116th Illinois, a rustling in the leaves and a firm step is heard. We anxiously look in that direction to see if our boys are running away. But no, a whisper goes up the line. It is General Logan, on foot and alone, passing up the line, saying, "Steady, boys, hold them." Confidence is restored in a moment. Sherman didn't think, as he moved the Army of the Tennessee to his right, that Hood would attack him again. Howard, on the other hand, believed that the Confederates would launch an assault on his line. When Sherman was informed of the attack, Sherman said, "Good, that is fine, just what I wanted, just what I wanted. Tell Howard to invite them to attack. It will save us trouble. They'll only beat their brains out."